how the whole thing started was I was purchasing vegetables at the farm market, and I noticed they didn't have a coffee seller. How do you go to a farmer's market without coffee, right? You have to have a cup of coffee when you do your shopping. So I just asked the organizer of the market, could I set up a table? I purchased the coffee maker and researched how to do it. Just Us helped us with how to brew and where to get the supplies for cups and things. And then we formed a little team in Halifax of volunteers to sell. So it's been going on since I believe we started the selling in 2017. Just Us and Breaking the Silence have a long-standing 30-year relationship where Breaking the Silence formed a partnership with Just Us. Just Us brings the coffee, the raw coffee. It's called green coffee. They bring that from Guatemala in shipments, and then they roast it. And we have our brand called Breaking the Silence Coffee. So they've got a special blend for us, and they use the organic coffee from Guatemala in our blend.
For us, the Breaking the Silence coffee product and the relationship that it represents is a really special one, in comparison to most of our products, because there's two pieces to the relationship with the Breaking the Silence product. One of them is with the Breaking the Silence network here in the Maritimes. And then the other is with the CCDA, which is the organization that actually grows the coffee and also works to buy back and restore Indigenous lands to the Indigenous community in Guatemala itself. So the coffee that's in the bag is coffee that's been purchased from CCDA, and so that organization makes money by selling the coffee to us, and then every sale of that bag of coffee contributes a certain amount of money to the Breaking the Silence network here in North America. Breaking the Silence does a really good job of not only expressing to our Canadian community members some of the challenges that are going on in Guatemala, but also bringing the good news of court cases that have been won by Indigenous community members, land that's been reacquired by those Indigenous peoples. And those are the really good stories that we look forward to through this work. Unfortunately, they're few, but they are really important wins when they come about.
I worked as a program director at Tatamagouche Center, which is a United Church adult education center serving both church and community. And Breaking the Silence became a program of Tatamagouche Center. And many United Church people have been involved with Breaking the Silence, and also the United Church is a financial supporter of Breaking the Silence. I would say that I am first profoundly impressed by the resilience of our partner organizations who have had to rebuild after great loss and suffering. In many cases, the families were impacted by the genocide. And so I think that has deeply impacted us. The amazing resilience of people, their capacity for organizing, for moving forward step by step, often without seeming to know where the next thing will come from, how they will proceed, and yet they move forward and are certainly an example for us. Breaking the Silence Coffee is so important because there are so many people on the waiting list to have their coffee beans purchased by Just Us. So it is incredibly important for us to support small farmers and the work of the Campesino Committee of the Highlands. It changed me in that, first of all, Canada has not recognized its issues with being part of of the problem. And in Guatemala, that includes Canadian mining companies that are imposing mines on Guatemalan indigenous peoples without free, prior, and informed consent. So that is part of what has changed me, is my realization of how Canada is complicit in the injustice in Guatemala.
It was a terrible situation. They had just been through a scorched earth policy, largely funded by the US, that basically wanted to terrorize the countryside and chase people out of the country. But we developed relationships with producer co-ops. That's cooperatives. It could be several hundred or several thousand small farmers in whatever country. It's all around the world. But they organize themselves into a cooperative and get a fair price for their coffee, which was about 2 times what they were getting on the market, maybe even more. When I first visited there, the coffee farmers said to me, this is the first thing that's ever made a real difference in our communities in generations. So it was quite a transition from to fair trade. And they faced a lot of violence from vested interests in the coffee industry who didn't want them to form cooperatives. And so they were seen as communists and troublemakers, and they risked their lives to form these co-ops. So it was a very brave thing to do.
They often will ask me, well, what's breaking the silence? What is the silence you're breaking? What are you talking about? Well, why is this a fundraiser? And so my response is, there's been historical silence about massacres that happened in Guatemala during the internal armed conflict that happened there. It was a 36-year war, and thousands and thousands of Mayan indigenous people were killed. Communities were destroyed, burned to the ground. It was a pretty horrific war. So breaking the silence is to break the silence and to open that historical memory so that the healing can happen.
You know, every cup is so much more than a cup of coffee. It represents this whole value chain of empowerment, really. We just want people to understand and respect where things come from. And I think that's a broader issue. You know, milk in the grocery store, people don't really consider the cow it came from. So it's just one of those things that the knowledge is power, and the sustainability piece when we're facing so many climate crises, that we really need to be thinking about how things are being done, where our food's coming from. And there's also the piece about like the exploitation, because coffee really traditionally is one of those products that came out of colonialization and from white supremacy and exploitation, and doing things differently is the way we should all be doing things moving forward. And coffee is just one example of that, for sure.
And I deeply believe in the organization. I'm very passionate about the work that we've been able to, just that presence, having a presence and being and deepening our understanding about what's happening there. I think that those are the big reasons for my involvement.
BTS has done a wonderful job, and as you say, the passing of the torch, I think, is underway, and I hope that there's 30 more years of success and beautiful partnership and lots more coffee to come in the future too.